I was betrayed by my family, or how one accident opened the path to independence and true happiness. My name is Clara, and I never imagined I would be the one holding everything together at 26. Most people my age are focused on building their careers or discovering themselves, but here I am, managing my own life while practically supporting my entire family. Clara, sweetie, the therapy bill came in today, my mom's voice crackled through the phone. Last Tuesday, it was the same conversation we had been having for months. I know you've already done so much, but I sighed, pulling up my banking app while cradling the phone between my ear and shoulder. How much this time, Mom? The story of how we got here is pretty straightforward, though nothing about living it has been easy. My sister, Lisa, who is 2 years older than me at 28, experienced what my mother likes to call a career setback about a year ago. That's putting it mildly. The truth is, Lisa had a complete breakdown when someone else got the position she had been eyeing at work. Instead of handling it professionally, she stormed out, burning bridges faster than a wildfire. I just can't believe they picked that sycophant, Jessica, over me. Lisa had sobbed into my shoulder the day it happened. Do you know how long I've been there? How hard I've worked? I remember sitting in my newly rented apartment, the one I had been so proud to get after graduating college, listening to her rant. At the time, I thought it would blow over in a few weeks. Lisa would cool down and maybe find an even better job. That's not how it played out. 6 months of processing time followed by another 6 months of selective job searching, that's how my parents described Lisa's unemployment. Meanwhile, I was the one making sure our parents' bills got paid, that there was food in their fridge, and that Lisa could continue seeing her therapist 3 times a week. The therapy is really helping her, Mom would say while I transferred another chunk of my salary to their account. She's making progress. Progress? From my perspective, all I saw was my sister lounging in our childhood home, scrolling through job listings with impossible requirements like must allow 4-day weekends and unlimited vacation time. Meanwhile, I was working overtime at my marketing firm, taking on extra clients, and barely having time to breathe. This past year has been exhausting for all of us. I could see the toll it was taking on my parents too, the worry lines deepening on Mom's face, Dad's shoulders slumping more each time Lisa rejected another not good enough job offer. Looking at my tired parents and feeling the weight of exhaustion myself, I decided we all needed something to look forward to. That's when I started planning a trip to Italy just for the 3 of us. I spent weeks organizing everything down to the smallest detail, the perfect hotel, private tours, and specialized experiences for both my parents. A culinary tour for Mom, who had always dreamed of tasting authentic Italian cuisine, and a vineyard and wine tour for Dad, who loved nothing more than a good glass of Chianti. I thought this trip would be perfect, a chance for us to escape the stress and make some happy memories together. I imagined us walking along the cobblestone streets, sharing bottles of wine at cozy trattorias, and finally seeing my parents smile again without worry creasing their foreheads. It's funny how life can change in a split second. One moment, I was driving to meet a client, mentally reviewing my presentation and thinking about our upcoming trip to Italy. The next moment, there was a deafening crash, the screech of metal against metal, and everything went black. I don't remember much about the accident itself, just fragments, the sound of sirens, paramedics talking over me, bright lights overhead. When I fully came to, I was already in the hospital recovery room, my body feeling like one massive bruise. The doctor told me I'd needed emergency surgery, but it had gone well. Still, I was going to be stuck here for a while. You're very lucky, the nurse said as she adjusted my fore. The airbag saved you from the worst of it, but that other car hit you pretty hard. I was still groggy from the anesthesia when my parents and Lisa walked into the room. Mom was carrying her favorite travel purse, the one she had bought specially for the Italy trip. The sight of it made my stomach sink. I'm so sorry, I managed to say, my throat still scratchy from the breathing tube. We'll have to postpone the trip. Don't worry, though. I'll cancel everything today, and we can reschedule for when I'm better. I expected sympathy, maybe some disappointment, but understanding? What I got instead was my mother's eerily calm voice saying, "Oh, there's no need to cancel anything, sweetie." The car that crashed into me felt like a distant memory as I stared at my parents, waiting for someone to say it was a joke. Lisa's been through so much this year, Mom added, patting my sister's shoulder. She really needs this break too. Lisa stepped forward, her expression a mix of frustration and concern. You were supposed to watch the house while we were gone, she said, but since you're here, you'll need to hire someone to do it. Make sure they're reliable. I lay there, mouth agape, unable to form words. These couldn't be my parents standing there, discussing their vacation plans while I lay in a hospital bed less than 24 hours after major surgery. They actually waved, and walked out, leaving me alone with the steady beeping of the heart monitor and the crushing realization that my family had just abandoned me for a vacation I had planned and paid for. I lay in my hospital bed for what felt like hours after they left, staring at the ceiling tiles, trying to process what had just happened. The pain medication couldn't numb the ache in my chest that had nothing to do with my injuries. They didn't even ask how I was feeling, I whispered to myself, the reality of this situation slowly sinking in. They didn't ask about the surgery, the accident, or anything. A nurse passed by my room for the third time, probably noticing my monitors showing an elevated heart rate. She paused in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Everything okay, honey? Your numbers are a bit high. My phone, I said suddenly, remembering. Could you please get my phone? It should be with my personal belongings. She returned a few minutes later with a plastic hospital bag containing my things. My hands were shaking slightly as I pulled out my phone, relief washing over me when I saw it was undamaged. The screen lit up, showing the background photo a picture of my parents and me from Christmas. I quickly changed it to the default wallpaper. At least something survived the crash, I muttered, opening my email app. The familiar folder labeled Italy trip sat there, containing all the confirmations and itineraries I'd so carefully planned over the past months. Well, I said to myself, my fingers hovering over the first confirmation email, if they want to treat me like a travel agent instead of a daughter, I'll act like one. One by one, I began systematically canceling everything. The hotel reservation was first, a few clicks, and the lovely suite with a view of the Colosseum vanished. Next would all the private tours I'd arranged, the culinary tour for mom, cancelled, dad's vineyard tour through the countryside, gone, the private guide I'd hired for the Vatican, the evening gondola ride, the skip-the-line passes for the Uffizi Gallery, I cancelled them all. With each cancellation, I felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness, definitely, these were experiences I had dreamed of sharing with my parents. But there was also a growing sense of not exactly satisfaction, but perhaps justice. They had chosen to treat my accident as an inconvenience to their vacation plans. They decided to take Lisa, who hadn't worked or contributed anything in a year, on a trip I paid for while I lay in a hospital bed. The last thing to cancel was the return flight. I stared at the confirmation for a long moment before clicking the cancellation button. A small, petty part of me wondered how they'd react when they realized they'd need to figure out their own way home after everything was cancelled. I put my phone on silent mode and placed it face down on the bedside table. They'd figure it out soon enough. Maybe somewhere over the Atlantic, they'd realize that actions have consequences, even within families. Maybe when they arrived at the airport in Italy with no hotel reservation, no tours, and no return flight, they'd understand what it feels like to be abandoned and left to figure things out on their own. The first message came at 4:37 a.m. my time. They must have just landed in Italy and arrived at a hotel. I watched my phone light up silently on the side table, a small smile playing on my lips despite the pain in my ribs. By breakfast time, there were 12 missed calls, by lunch, 38. The messages started piling up too, little notification badges growing larger by the hour. I entertained myself by keeping a tally on the back of my patient mail menu. Missed calls from mom, 23, from dad, 15, from Lisa, 42, text messages currently sitting at 48, voice messages, 16 and counting. Let's see what kind of emergency could be so urgent that they'd blow up a hospital patient's phone, I muttered to myself. After the count passed 50, I picked up my phone, wincing at the movement, and started reading. Understand why you're doing this to us? We're your parents. I couldn't help but laugh at that one, even though it hurt my stitches. We've never done anything like this to each other before. What about abandoning your injured daughter in the hospital to go on a vacation she paid for? Dad's messages were shorter but equally demanding. Call immediately. Fix this now. Your mother is crying. The phone kept buzzing incessantly, new messages appearing faster than I could read them. The hotel won't let us check in. Where are our tour reservations? What do you mean you canceled the return flights? Answer your phone right now. I was reading a particularly hostile message from Lisa about how I'd ruined everything when Dr. Matthews walked in, his face stern. Miss Wilson, that phone has been ringing nonstop for hours. This is a hospital, not a call center. We need to maintain a peaceful environment for all our patients. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I'm sorry, doctor. It's just I found myself explaining everything, the accident, the Italy trip I'd planned, my family's reaction, and my cancellations. He listened intently, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Just then, my phone started ringing again, Mom's face flashing on the screen. Without hesitation, Dr. Matthews picked up the phone. Hello, this is Dr. Matthews from Memorial Hospital. I must ask you to stop calling your daughter. She needs rest and is about to undergo a second operation. I could hear my mother's shrill voice through the speaker. I don't care about any operation. Put my daughter on the phone right now. She needs to fix what she did to us. The doctor's face went through several expressions: shock, disbelief, and finally anger. He ended the call and turned to me, shaking his head. I'll be keeping this until after your second operation, he said firmly, pocketing my phone. You need to focus on healing, not dealing with this. The days after my second surgery passed in a hazy blur of pain medication and fitful sleep. Without my phone, I had no idea what was happening with my family in Italy, but honestly, the silence was healing in its own way. Life has a funny way of surprising you. Knock, knock. Sarah from marketing poked her head around my door on my third day post-surgery. We brought contraband. She and Tom from accounting snuck in with actual coffee from the cafe down the street. The next day, it was Lisa and Jerome from my team, armed with magazines and gossip from the office. The day after that, my cousin Angela, whom I hadn't seen in months, showed up with homemade soup. We've got a schedule worked out, Lisa told me, showing me a color-coded spreadsheet on her tablet. Someone from the office will stop by every day. We can't have our best project manager getting lonely. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. You guys didn't have to do this. Oh, please, Jerome waved off my protest. After all the time you've covered for us, this is nothing. Even my boss, Mr. Richardson, called the hospital directly. Ruby, don't worry about a thing, his gruff voice was unusually gentle. The accident happened during work hours, so you're fully covered by our insurance. They'll be settling with a decent payout. Should help with your recovery and then some. On my fourth day of phone-free recovery, Dr. Matthews returned with my device. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, he said, placing it on my bedside table. Though I'd understand if you wanted to leave it off a bit longer. I picked it up with trembling hands. Over 100 missed calls, countless text messages, dozens of voicemails. I started reading chronologically, watching the tone evolve over the days. The first wave was pleading, Ruby, you need to understand our position. We're family. We can work this out. Then came the guilt trips, how could you humiliate us like this? We don't deserve this treatment. Finally, the accusations started, you won't believe the dump we're staying in, Lisa wrote. There are actual bed bugs in the room. Dad's sleeping on a cot. We hear gunshots at night. Mom's messages were equally dramatic, we can barely afford to eat. We're buying from street vendors like homeless people. We haven't gone on a single tour or seen anything properly. Is this what you wanted, to make your parents suffer? The latest message was a demand for return tickets home, followed by a string of complaints about their accommodations and the lack of any enjoyable experiences. I felt a mix of emotions as I read through their messages: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of empowerment. They had chosen to prioritize by multiple threats about what would happen if I didn't comply immediately. I placed the phone face down on the table just as another knock came at my door. It was Amy from HR, brandishing a deck of cards and a bag of smuggled cookies. Ready to learn poker? She asked with a grin. Looking at her excited face and then back at my phone, I made a choice. I turned the phone off completely and smiled. Deal me in. I was having a relatively good day when they burst in. My physical therapist had just finished our session, and I was feeling proud about being able to walk a few steps on my own. The sound of rolling suitcase wheels on hospital linoleum was my only warning before my family exploded into my room like a hurricane. How dare you? Mom's face was red with fury, still wearing her travel clothes. How dare you do this to us? Paula was right behind her, dragging her designer suitcase that I'd bought her last Christmas. Dad lurked in the doorway, looking simultaneously angry and somehow embarrassed. Nurse Jenny, who had been changing my stepped between them and my bed. Lower your voices immediately. This is a hospital, not a circus tent. But they were beyond reason. 2 weeks of frustration came pouring out like a broken dam. She's fine here. Paula gestured wildly around my private room. Look at her, lying in her nice clean bed, getting 3 meals a day while we suffered. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the painkillers giving me courage, or maybe I just finally had enough. Suffered? My voice came out quiet but sharp. Let's talk about suffering, shall we? The room fell silent. For the past year, I've been working myself to exhaustion supporting this family, paying your bills, buying your groceries, covering Paula's therapy sessions while she sits at home refusing perfectly good job offers because they're not perfect enough. Mom opened her mouth to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I planned this trip as a surprise. I spent months organizing everything, paid for it all myself. Then I get into a serious accident, need emergency surgery, and what do? You don't even ask how I'm feeling. Instead, you decide to take Paula, who hasn't contributed a single penny to this family in over a year, on my vacation while I'm lying in a hospital bed. I could see Mom's face starting to show traces of embarrassment, but it didn't last long. You can afford to go to Italy anytime you want, she snapped back. This might have been our only chance. Then Paula, my own sister, delivered the final blow. Besides, you might have been left disabled after the accident. Then you definitely would have cancelled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad we should go without you while everything was still paid for. The room went deadly quiet, even Mom looked shocked at Paula's words. I reached for my call button with trembling fingers. Security, please, I said when the speaker crackled. I need 3 people escorted out of my room, and I want them added to the restricted visitors list. Ruby, don't you dare. Mom started, but 2 security guards were already in the doorway. This patient is recovering from major surgery, one guard said firmly. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I watched them being escorted out, my mother's indignant voice echoing down the hallway, my father's silence speaking volumes, and my sister's protests growing fainter. The day after the hospital confrontation, I did something I should have done months ago. I locked their numbers, all of them. My finger hovered over Dad's contact for a moment longer than the others, but in the end, his silence during all of this had been just as hurtful as their actions. Next came the banking apps. I canceled all the automatic transfers I'd set up for their bills, no more monthly deposits for Paula's therapy, no more utility payments, no more grocery money. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was almost physical, I could actually breathe easier. 2 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. My apartment felt like a sanctuary when I finally returned home. My work friends had cleaned it, stocked the fridge, and even put fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. No family drama, no guilt trips, no financial demands, just peace and quiet. I focused on my recovery, did my physical therapy exercises, and slowly began to reclaim my life. As the days turned into weeks, I found a rhythm. I started cooking for myself again, rediscovering the joy of preparing meals without the weight of obligation hanging over me. I even began to explore new hobbies, like painting and gardening, things I had put aside while I was busy managing everyone else's needs. Each small victory felt monumental, a step toward reclaiming my independence. I started working remotely, and life developed a rhythm that didn't revolve around crisis management for once. Then, about a month after my discharge, my phone started buzzing with messages from cousins and family friends. Mom had apparently decided to take her grievances to Facebook. My own daughter has abandoned us in our time of need, she wrote. After everything we've done for her, she's turned her back on her poor struggling parents. Paula can't find work, bills are piling up, and Ruby won't even answer our calls. Some of her friends, who didn't know the whole story, rushed to comfort her. How terrible! After raising such an ungrateful child. Family should always come first. I'll pray for your daughter to find her way back to her family. I was about to close the app when my cousin Angela's comment appeared. Aunt Linda, are you seriously playing victim here? You abandoned Ruby in the hospital after her car accident to go on a vacation she paid for. You took Paula instead of supporting your injured daughter. Everyone in the family knows what really happened. More relatives who knew the truth started commenting, sharing details about how I'd supported the family for a year while Paula refused to work, how I'd planned the trip as a surprise, and how they visited me in the hospital while my own parents were touring Europe. The post disappeared 2 days later, but screenshots were already circulating in the family group chat. Mom's attempt to paint herself as the victim had backfired spectacularly. 3 months after the accident that changed everything, I walked into our office building without my cane for the first time. My steps were steady, my head held high. The physical therapy had paid off. I was finally back to normal, maybe even stronger than before. I expected a quiet first day back, maybe some awkward small talk by the coffee machine. Instead, I found my entire department gathered around my desk. A massive cake, they chorused as I walked in. Welcome back, Ruby. The cake was beautiful, 3 tiers of vanilla and chocolate, decorated with fondant flowers and a tiny figurine of a woman standing tall. My eyes welled up immediately. You guys? I started but couldn't finish. Sarah pulled me into a gentle hug while Tom started cutting the cake. Oh, and this came for you, Lisa said, handing me an envelope. It was from the insurance company. I opened it right there, surrounded by my work family, and nearly dropped it when I saw the settlement amount. The figure had more zeros than I'd expected. Later that night, sitting in my apartment with a piece of leftover cake, I opened my laptop and started browsing travel sites. The same luxury hotel in Paris I'd originally booked popped up in my search results. Without hesitation, I checked availability for 3 months from now. Single room this time, I murmured to myself, smiling as I clicked through the booking process. Next came the tours, the same ones I'd planned before but now modified for a solo traveler, the cheese tour, the wine tasting, the private Louvre guide. I booked them all. This time, every experience would be exactly what I wanted, no compromises needed. My phone buzzed again, another attempt at contact from my family. A text from Mom, we miss you. A voicemail from Dad. An email from Paula. Earlier that week, they'd even sent a bouquet of expensive flowers to my apartment. I'd thrown them straight into the dumpster. The last message was from a number I didn't recognize. Ruby, it's Mom. Please talk to us. We're still family. I deleted it without responding and turned back to my laptop. The confirmation emails were arriving, hotel, tours, flights, but this time, seeing them didn't fill me with anxiety about pleasing others or managing everyone's expectations. Instead, I felt nothing but excitement. Moving the laptop aside, I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. 3 more months, and I'd be walking the streets of Paris, eating at cafes, visiting museums, and making memories, my own memories, on my own terms. My phone buzzed again with another number, undoubtedly another family member trying to reach me. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I pulled up my photo gallery and deleted the old family photos I'd been hanging on to. It was time for new pictures, new memories, new adventures. Sometimes the family you choose, friends, colleagues, kind strangers who become more than strangers, are more family than the ones you're born into. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but standing there, planning my solo adventure, I knew I'd never forget it.